Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the Westall UFO, the 1966 Australian mass UFO sighting with over 200 witnesses that the government tried to erase. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On April 6, 1966, at approximately 11:00 a.m., the students and teachers at Westall High School and Westall Primary School in the Melbourne suburb of Clayton South, Victoria, Australia, observed something extraordinary in the sky. The schools had a combined population of approximately 300 students and teachers, and a large proportion of them witnessed the events that followed. A silver or gray disc-shaped craft, approximately twice the size of a car, descended rapidly over the nearby Grange Reserve and landed in the open paddock area behind the school grounds. Students ran toward the landing site. The craft sat for several minutes, then rose rapidly and flew away to the northwest, making a 360-degree turn before departing. Multiple smaller craft were also reported in the area. What makes Westall unusual, even in the extensive literature of UFO cases, is the sheer quality of the witnesses and the degree of subsequent official response. More than 200 witnesses have been documented, including teachers, who by definition were educated adults in a position of professional responsibility, students ranging from young children to older teenagers, and members of the public in the surrounding neighborhood who observed the craft. The craft left physical traces, a circular depression, and flattened grass in the paddock where it landed, that were observed by students before official personnel arrived and apparently removed evidence. Local police were called. The school principal instructed students to say nothing about what they had seen. In the years since 1966, multiple witnesses have spoken publicly about what they saw and about the aftermath. A documentary, Westall 66, a suburban UFO mystery, 2010, featuring extensive witness testimony, established the case's details in the public record. What makes Westall different from most UFO cases is that it is not a story of ambiguous lights in the night sky interpreted through excitement and cultural expectation. It is a story of a physical craft in broad daylight, observed at close range by hundreds of people who were not anonymous and who have maintained their accounts for 6 decades. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Governments keep secrets. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is documented fact, confirmed by declassified archives, freedom of information disclosures, and the confessions of officials long after the events in question. The United States government ran secret programs to test psychedelic drugs on unwitting civilians culture, to spy on its own citizens, COINTELPRO, and to cover up nuclear testing incidents that killed American soldiers. The British government suppressed information about UFO encounters by military personnel for decades. The Soviet Union systematically falsified scientific data to maintain ideological conformity. None of this means that every government secret involves supernatural phenomena or alien contact. The reality of classified programs is almost always more mundane. Military technology being tested covertly, intelligence operations that cannot be publicly acknowledged, or simply the bureaucratic instinct to classify first and justify later. Most UFO sightings that turn out to have official explanations were classified aircraft. Most government denials of anomalous phenomena are straightforwardly honest. The phenomena being denied are simply not real. But the documented history of government secrecy has a practical effect on investigative credibility. When officials deny knowledge of events that witnesses describe in compelling detail, that denial cannot be taken at face value without independent corroboration. The proven track record of institutional concealment means that institutional denial, however authoritative it sounds, is not the same as evidence of absence. This complicates every modern mystery that touches on official narrative. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Westall UFO, the 1966 Australian mass UFO sighting with over 200 witnesses that the government tried to erase, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Westall event occurred on Wednesday, April 6, 1966, between approximately 11:00 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. during school hours. The two affected schools, Westall High School, Secondary, ages 12-18, and Westall Primary School, ages 5-12, were adjacent to each other in Clayton South, a southeastern suburb of Melbourne, Victoria. The nearby Grange Reserve, a small area of grass and trees used as a recreational space, bordered the school property and was where students and other witnesses ran to observe the craft at close range. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered multiple teachers at Westall High School observed the craft and subsequently faced pressure not to discuss what they saw. One teacher, Andrew Greenwood, reportedly made drawings of the craft and discussed the sighting with students before being instructed by the principal to stop. Several former students have recalled that teachers were visibly frightened by what they saw and were clearly told by the school administration or by outside authorities to discourage any further discussion. The principal's instruction to students to say nothing about the incident was recalled by multiple witnesses independently. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Physical evidence was reported in the form of a circular depression in the grass and soil of the paddock where the craft landed, surrounded by a ring of flattened or bent grass consistent with the craft's dimensions. Multiple students reported seeing this depression clearly before the area was cordoned off and the evidence apparently removed. One student, Joy Clark, now Joy Tighe, was reportedly treated for minor injuries after approaching the landing site while the craft was still present. The physical trace evidence was not systematically documented before it was disturbed. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, government documents obtained through the Australian Freedom of Information Act have produced limited relevant materials. Some radar records from RAF, Royal Australian Air Force, installations in the Melbourne area for the relevant date and time have never been found, a gap in records that could be explained by routine destruction of older records, by misidentification of the request, or by deliberate destruction of relevant evidence. The Department of Defence response to FOI requests about Westall has consistently stated that no records can be located. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the 2010 documentary Westall 66, a suburban UFO mystery directed by Rosie Cooney and produced for Australian television, collected contemporary and on-camera accounts from more than a dozen witnesses who agreed to be filmed. The documentary provided the most comprehensive public record of the event available and brought it to a new audience. A significant number of witnesses declined to participate, citing continuing concerns about being believed or facing social consequences. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The RAF, Royal Australian Air Force, had aircraft operating in the Melbourne area on the date of the incident, and some investigators have proposed that the craft observed at Westall was a classified RAF experimental aircraft on a test flight that strayed or developed problems near the school. The subsequent official response, including the evident official pressure on teachers and students to remain silent, would be more easily explained by a classified military aircraft incident than by an extraterrestrial event. However, witnesses who observed the craft at close range consistently described a silver disc with no visible wings, engine exhaust, or conventional propulsion system. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Westall UFO, the 1966 Australian mass UFO sighting with over 200 witnesses that the government tried to erase. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the genuine UAP theory holds that what the Westall witnesses observed was a genuine unidentified aerial phenomenon, whether extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or of some other non-human origin, and that the official response represented a genuine cover-up of a significant event. Under this theory, the physical characteristics of the craft, disc shape, rapid ascent, apparent field effects on approaching witnesses, the physical trace evidence, and the systematic suppression of witness testimony all indicate that something highly anomalous occurred, and that someone in the official hierarchy knew what it was. The absence of any satisfactory official explanation after 60 years supports this interpretation. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the secret military aircraft theory proposes that the Westall craft was an experimental RAF or US military, possibly CIA aircraft that developed problems or was conducting tests in the area and was observed under circumstances that were not planned. The subsequent pressure on witnesses to be silent, the apparent removal of physical trace evidence, and the gaps in official records are all more easily explained by classified military aircraft recovery than by denial of an alien encounter. The technology of the 1966 craft, which witnesses described as able to ascend at impossible speed and hover silently, would, under this theory, represent then classified technology rather than extraterrestrial engineering. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the mass misidentification theory, the skeptical position, proposes that a significant number of witnesses observed a conventional object, a weather balloon, a small aircraft, a bright meteor fragment, that was misidentified under the excitement of the moment and subsequently embellished through decades of retelling. Under this model, the initial report involved a genuinely unusual sighting that was ambiguous enough to be interpreted as a disc-shaped craft, and the subsequent social dynamics of a shared experience caused the accounts to converge on increasingly dramatic details over time. Critics note that the simultaneous, independent, immediate reports from hundreds of witnesses are difficult to explain by retrospective embellishment. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Westall UFO, the 1966 Australian mass UFO sighting with over 200 witnesses that the government tried to erase, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the testimonial evidence from more than 200 witnesses, including teachers, is the primary evidence for the event. The quality of the witnesses, educated adults in positions of professional responsibility who had no obvious motive to fabricate a coordinated story, is unusually high for a UFO event. The consistency of the core account silver disc landing in the paddock rapid departure across witnesses interviewed separately over a period of 6 decades is a strong indicator of a genuine shared experience. The 2010 documentary's filmed interviews provide a permanent record of witness accounts that can be evaluated independently, This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the apparent physical trace evidence, the circular depression and flattened grass described by multiple witnesses who reached the landing site before it was disturbed, is the closest thing to physical evidence available. The description of a clear circular depression in the paddock consistent with a craft of the described size was given by multiple independent witnesses who observed it simultaneously. The apparent removal of this evidence by persons unknown, possibly authorities, before it could be systematically documented is consistent with either a genuine cover-up of a significant event or with routine official response to an apparently hysterical public incident. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the documented official response, the instruction to students and teachers to remain silent, the pressure on teachers who discussed the event, the apparent absence of official records from RAF installations for the relevant time period, is evidence of an unusual degree of official concern about the event. If the craft was simply a weather balloon or conventional aircraft, the official response would be to provide a simple explanation rather than to suppress witness testimony. The suppression behavior is more consistent with official knowledge of something anomalous than with the management of a mundane misidentification. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Westall UFO, the 1966 Australian mass UFO sighting with over 200 witnesses that the government tried to erase. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Westall case has become the most documented and most studied UFO event in Australian history. Annual commemoration events in Clayton South bring together surviving witnesses and researchers, and the event has been covered by Australian national media on multiple occasions. The State Library of Victoria has archival records related to the case, and the Westall UFO community has maintained active online documentation of witness accounts. Several former students have organized formally under the Westall UFO Encounter Research Group to preserve documentation and advocate for official transparency. In 2014 and subsequent years, the former students and witnesses made formal requests to the Australian government for disclosure of any records related to the event, without significant result. The continued interest in the Westall case, now more than 50 years after the event, reflects the witnesses' conviction that something significant happened and has not been acknowledged. The advanced ages of the original witnesses, who are now in their 60s, 80s, create increasing urgency around documenting their accounts before they are no longer available. Furthermore, The tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Westall UFO, the 1966 Australian mass UFO sighting with over 200 witnesses that the government tried to erase, the historical record through the physical evidence across the competing theories and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Westall UFO ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle, it is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.